I still remember the exact moment when things began to change. It was a Wednesday evening. Normally, when my wife Sara came home from work, she would always tell me about her day. It was our routine for years. She would drop her bag, smile at me, and dive into every detail of her meetings, the annoying colleague, the new project she was working on. But that evening, she walked in quietly, barely glancing at me, and sat on the couch, staring at her phone. I asked her how her day was, like I always did. She mumbled something under her breath, something like, "Fine," and then fell silent. At first, I thought she was just tired, stressed maybe. I did not push. But over the next few days, the pattern continued. The usual stories about her day stopped. She seemed distant, always looking distracted. I would ask simple questions, and her answers were always vague. When I asked if everything was okay, she would just nod or say, "Yeah, just work stuff." It was strange because she never hid anything from me before. I did not want to overthink it, but my gut told me something was off. One day, I noticed she had started dressing up a bit more than usual. New clothes, her hair always perfect, a touch more makeup. I commented on it casually, asking if she had something special going on at work. She shrugged it off, said it was just to feel better about herself. Again, I wanted to believe her. We all go through phases of wanting to look good for ourselves, right? But then I started noticing other things. There were small things, like how she had become suddenly critical of me, something she never used to do. One evening, out of nowhere, she remarked that I should start working out more, that I was getting too comfortable. It hurt, but I laughed it off, thinking it was just a passing comment. Then she started pointing out other things, the way I dressed, my habits around the house. "Do you have to leave your shoes here?" she would say, or, "You could try helping more with the laundry." These weren't things that had ever bothered her before. I started feeling like I was walking on eggshells. I could not tell if I was doing something wrong or if she was just going through some phase. But one night, as she was getting ready for bed, I saw something that made my heart drop. A small box, wrapped in bright paper, sitting on the dresser. I asked her about it, jokingly, assuming it was for me. Her response was cold, defensive. "It's for a colleague," she said quickly, brushing me off. I wanted to ask more, but I stopped myself. The way she snapped at me, it wasn't worth the argument. Days passed, and I could not shake off the uneasy feeling inside me. My mind kept going back to that gift. Why had she not mentioned it before? And why did she seem so nervous when I asked about it? I tried to focus on work, on anything else, but the doubts started creeping in more and more. Was she hiding something from me? Was there someone else? One afternoon, I was home early, and she was still at work. I sat in the living room, thinking about how distant she had become, how different things felt between us. I could not ignore it anymore. I walked over to her side of the bed, the place where she kept her things. I knew I should not, but something pulled me to look through her phone. I needed answers. I had never done something like this before. We had always trusted each other completely, but I could not help it. I found nothing at first, just the usual messages between friends and work emails. But then there was a name I did not recognize. Ali. I clicked on the conversation, and as I read through it, my worst fears started to come true. The messages were casual, mostly about work. But then there were emojis, late-night chats, and eventually plans to meet up outside of work. My heart raced. I scrolled further, trying to find more, and then I saw it. A photo of the gift. The same one I had seen on her dresser. The one she said was for a colleague. I felt sick. The room started spinning. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, but I just stood there, frozen. This was it. This was the confirmation I had been dreading. When she came home that evening, I could barely look at her. Every time she spoke, I heard nothing but lies. I wanted to scream, to confront her, to demand answers, but I stayed silent. I needed to know more before I exploded. Maybe, just maybe, I was overreacting. The next week was hell. Every time she left the house, I was consumed by the thought of her with Ali. I would check her phone when she was in the shower, trying to piece together more of the story. I felt disgusting for doing it, but I could not stop myself. I needed to know why, how, when it had all gone wrong. How had we gotten here? Then came the day I could not hold it in anymore. She came home late, much later than usual. She was smiling, laughing about something on her phone. I could not take it. I asked her straight out, "Who is Ali?" Her face went pale. For a second I saw fear in her eyes, but then it quickly changed to anger. "What are you talking about?" she snapped, avoiding my gaze. I stood up, feeling the heat rising inside me. "Do not lie to me. I know about the messages, the gift. I know everything." She stood there, silent, biting her lip. The tension in the room was unbearable. Finally, she spoke, her voice shaky. "It's not what you think. He's just a friend. We talk, that's all." But I could not believe her. Not anymore. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you hide it?" Her silence said everything. She sat down on the couch, burying her face in her hands. "I don't know," she whispered. "I didn't mean for it to get like this. I was just lonely. We've been so distant, and I didn't know how to talk to you anymore." Her words cut deep. I wanted to yell, to scream at her for betraying me, for breaking my trust. But instead I just stood there, feeling numb. I realized then that it wasn't just her fault. We had both let things slip. I had been so focused on my own life, my own problems, that I hadn't noticed how far apart we had grown. I had taken her for granted, and now here we were, broken. I didn't know what to do next. Should I forgive her? Could I? The anger inside me told me to leave, to walk out and never look back. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, wanted to stay, to fix things, to fight for us. In that moment, I realized there was no easy answer. Betrayal wasn't black and white. There were layers to it, pain on both sides. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. We couldn't go back to the way things were. We had to find a new way forward, or let go of what was already lost.